Imagine this. You're standing in a crowded room, voices clashing like swords, each person convinced they hold the only truth. Your opponent, sharp-tongued, relentless, presents an argument so flawed it's almost laughable. Yet, as you counter with logic, evidence, reason, something strange happens. The crowd turns against you. The harder you fight, the more they resist. Your facts are ignored. Your credibility erodes. And then, the chilling realization. You're losing. Not because you're wrong, but because you don't understand the game. Here's the paradox. Truth alone doesn't win arguments. If it did, conspiracy theories would dissolve under scrutiny, and political debates would end in consensus. Instead, we live in a world where conviction often overrides facts, where the feeling of being right matters more than being right itself. Why? What dark alchemy transforms clear logic into a losing battle? Consider this. Have you ever walked away from an argument, replaying it in your head, wondering how someone could be so blind to reason? Or worse, have you ever changed your mind mid-debate, not because the facts swayed you, but because the other person dismantled your confidence, your identity, your sense of control? The unsettling truth is that arguments are rarely about truth. They're about power. They're about survival. They're about the primal human need to defend not just ideas, but the self behind them. When you argue, you're not just exchanging words, you're waging psychological warfare. And if you don't understand the battlefield, you've already lost. So here's the great question. What if you could win every argument, not by being right, but by mastering the hidden rules of persuasion, deception, and human vulnerability? What if the key to victory lies not in the words you say, but in the shadows they cast on the minds of those who hear them? The answer is closer than you think, and far more dangerous. The moment you open your mouth to argue, you step into an ancient arena, one where logic is merely a gladiator, and emotion is the emperor deciding its fate. Carl Jung understood this when he wrote, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge." We don't argue to discover truth. We argue to protect our egos, to fortify our tribes, to silence the creeping dread of uncertainty. Friedrich Nietzsche saw it clearly. Convictions are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies. When you confront someone's belief, you aren't just challenging an idea, you're threatening their identity. The brain reacts like a cornered animal, deploying cognitive distortions, confirmation bias, even outright denial to preserve its sense of coherence. This is why the most brilliant debaters often fail. They attack the fortress when they should be subverting the guards. Arthur Schopenhauer, in The Art of Being Right, exposed the dirty secret. The triumph of persuasion is not in proving truth, but in making the opponent's position feel absurd. Society rewards not those who are correct, but those who appear correct, through confidence, rhetoric, and psychological dominance. The courtroom, the political stage, the dinner table, all operate on this unspoken law. And here's the cruel twist. The more someone feels attacked, the more their mind weaponizes ignorance. Jean-Paul Sartre captured it perfectly. Hell is other people, but the deeper hell? The prison of our own defensiveness. When you argue, you're not just fighting a person, you're fighting evolution itself, a brain wired to equate being wrong with being unsafe. So the question shifts. If reason is so powerless against the human psyche, what actually works? The answer lies not in philosophy, but in the shadowed crossroads of psychology and manipulation. And the next revelation will change how you speak forever. Every argument you lose doesn't just vanish, it lingers, shaping reality in ways you never notice. The coworker who steamrolls your objections gains influence. The relative who weaponizes guilt silences dissent. The politician who twists narratives rewrites history. Slowly, imperceptibly, the world bends toward those who master persuasion over truth. Cognitive science reveals the brutal mechanics. The backfire effect hardens beliefs when challenged. Confirmation bias filters out opposing evidence, and social proof makes crowds follow the loudest voice, not the wisest. Your brain isn't designed to find truth. It's designed to survive, even if that means clinging to delusions. Aldous Huxley warned of this in Brave New World. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. Yet here we are, drowning in information, but starved for understanding. Worse, every failed argument trains others to dismiss you. Like a rat avoiding an electrified cage, people learn to sidestep your logic, mock your passion, or worse, tune you out entirely. Viktor Frankl observed this in the concentration camps. An abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. In a world where manipulation outpaces reason, losing arguments becomes self-fulfilling. You grow quieter, they grow bolder. The cycle feeds itself. But the greatest cost is invisible, the slow erosion of your agency. Each defeat whispers that persuasion is futile, that truth is powerless, until you stop speaking altogether. This is how societies slide into collective delusion, how scams thrive, how tyrants rise. Not because lies are strong, but because the tools to fight them are miscalibrated. Yet within this bleak landscape lies a forbidden insight. If the system is rigged, you can rig it back. The key isn't to reject human nature, but to hack it. And the moment you grasp how, the balance of power shifts forever. The moment you realize logic alone is powerless, you become dangerous. Not because you abandon truth, but because you learn to weaponize perception. This is the art of strategic persuasion, where psychology trumps reason, and the battlefield is the subconscious. Start with this radical shift. Stop trying to convince. Instead, reframe the conflict. Sun Tzu's ancient maxim applies. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. When someone digs in, don't confront, unbalance. Ask questions that force them to expose their own flaws. How would that idea work in practice? What evidence would change your mind? Suddenly, the weight of proof shifts. Their certainty wavers. Next, exploit cognitive dissonance. People hate holding contradictory beliefs. If their stance clashes with their self-image, I'm smart, this idea is stupid, they'll reject the idea to preserve their ego. So align your position with their identity. A Trump supporter won't listen to liberal facts, but might trust a conservative source saying the same thing. A corporate traditionalist scoffs at disruptive startups until you frame innovation as returning to old-school entrepreneurial values. Then, master the illusion of control. Studies show people accept ideas more readily when they feel it was their conclusion. Instead of declaring, "This is true," lead them with, "I've been wrestling with something, help me figure it out." Let them discover the answer. Now, it's their idea, and they'll defend it fiercely. Finally, escalate the stakes of surrender. Humans fear loss more than they desire gain. Show how their current belief will cost them status, security, or belonging. I admire your loyalty to that idea, but I'd hate to see it left behind as things change. Suddenly, clinging to their position feels risky. This isn't manipulation, it's linguistic jujitsu. You're not creating falsehoods. You're removing the psychological barriers that blind people to truth. The game was always rigged. Now you hold the lever. But the final revelation is even more profound because it exposes why winning arguments might be the wrong goal altogether. Here's the secret no one tells you. The only argument you ever truly needed to win was the one with yourself. All this time, you've been fighting phantoms, external opponents, imagined judges, the knowing need to be right, when the real battleground was always internal. Friedrich Nietzsche glimpsed it. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. The compulsion to dominate debates, to force surrender from others, was never about truth. It was about your own hunger for validation, your terror of uncertainty, your silent plea. See me, respect me, tell me I matter. But what if you detached from the need to win at all? What if the most powerful stance isn't conquest, but invulnerability? The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." When you stop needing the crowd's approval, their noise becomes irrelevant. You speak not to persuade, but to clarify, for yourself and for the rare few who are truly listening. This is the paradox. The less you care about winning arguments, the more influence you gain. Because now, you're no longer a slave to the game. You don't flinch at opposition. You don't crave the last word. Your calm becomes unnerving. Your refusal to engage on their terms disarms them. And in that void, something extraordinary happens. The people who once resisted start asking for your perspective. Not because you fought harder, but because you were the only one who didn't seem desperate. So the ultimate mastery isn't in tactics or rhetoric. It's in transcending the need to fight altogether. You'll know you've arrived when you can watch an opponent froth with certainty, smug in their victory, and feel nothing but quiet amusement. They got the applause. You kept your sovereignty. The final question isn't how do I win, but why did I ever think I needed to? And with that, you're free. Here's the devastating irony at the heart of all human conflict. The arguments we fight most fiercely are never about facts. They're about the stories we tell ourselves to survive. Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps by finding meaning in suffering, understood this better than anyone. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Every argument you've ever lost was lost in that space before the first word was spoken. In the unconscious stories of threat, ego, an identity that hijacked reason before logic could enter the room. The ultimate revelation? Truth doesn't win arguments, but it doesn't need to. The moment you stop playing the game of persuasion is the moment you become truly formidable. Like a chess master who no longer cares about capturing pieces but controls the entire board, you'll find that most debates are beneath you. The Japanese concept of mushin, no mind, applies perfectly. When you cease straining for victory, you move with effortless precision. Your opponents, still trapped in their desperate need to be right, will exhaust themselves against your calm. Jean-Paul Sartre was right when he said, "Hell is other people," but he missed the corollary. Heaven is no longer needing anything from them. When you stop requiring validation through argument, you break the cycle. Your silence becomes more compelling than their cleverest retort. Your patience unnerves them more than their anger moves you. So here's the final, liberating truth. The only argument that ever mattered was the one you had with your own need to argue. Win that, and you've won everything. Lose it, and no amount of external victories will ever satisfy. The choice is yours. Keep fighting ghosts, or step out of the arena entirely. One path leads to endless conflict. The other to something far more powerful. Peace that needs no proof.